How's everybody doing this morning? What a powerful, I love getting to worship with you guys week in and week out. And same thing happens Saturday night as well. Got to tell you, I'm just really excited. We had our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders all the last 24 hours they spent at a conference called Super Start. And we had, I think, close to 30 students go. Is anybody in here that went and helped with that? You know, the crazy thing was, okay, they're testing Keegan. Crazy thing was, there was a huge crew in here, first service. It's like, I imagine you guys needed to sleep in, right? I've been on that trip. Tess and Keegan used to go with me before they had kids, and I loved it because I told Keegan before he left. I caught him here Friday before they left. It's like, this age group doesn't shave, but for some reason they always bring shaving cream, right? And I remember the last time that him and I went, and I think Matt was with us too. It snowed and all kinds of crazy stuff. But listen, Brandy and her crew are doing just excellent work. And if you think that you may have an inkling to come and help in that area, boy, there's no brighter, better investment. And so just appreciate all that helped lead and do that, and then get up and continue to lead and do that even after a long weekend like that. Well, we are reminded of what we first said when we first started this series. It's like, listen, Jesus didn't die so you could be safe. He died so you could be dangerous. And we're gonna be reminded of that again in this story that we're gonna read and let unfold. But this idea that, you know, if you've ever talked to someone, maybe you've been yourself, you have been at a place where, you know, maybe the Bible was a bit challenging for you to digest. Not just digest, but maybe even believe at certain times. This is one of my favorite passages. And many times I get to talk to people who are you know, maybe in the middle of being skeptic or exploring what this is all about, and maybe even like looking at the Bible, is it even true? And this story is one of those stories where somebody is like, Rob, this is one of those stories I have trouble with. You know, it's like, why is that? You know, why, you know, I just have a hard time believing that, you know, that in the words that Jesus could speak could stop something that's so powerful as just a force of nature. And, you know, as we think about the Bible and its inherency, that it is true. It is the Word of God is it is in this account as we read it. It's an eyewitness account of what happened through the eyes of Peter. And so when we looked at this, when we jump into this story, we're in the end of chapter 4, and it just simply says this: that day evening came, and the disciples and he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped, and Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drowned?" He got up, rebuked the wind and the waves, to be quiet, be still. The wind died down and was completely calm. And he said to his disciples, Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And they were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." I love that question. Who is this? You know, as we at Mark's intent is for us to get a clear picture of who Jesus is. If you don't have a clear picture of who Jesus is, I pray that today you will begin to get a better picture, because oftentimes we go through our lives and we look at Jesus through the lens of our own life, don't we? Right? We kind of do. It's like what I'm dealing with, my values, my likes, those sorts of things. It's like, okay, as long as Jesus, and as long as Jesus looks like I think he should, we'll be good, right? And today, these guys come face to face with Jesus that they're not so sure. It says they're terrified. And when we think about this, when we think about and people who are thinking about this Jesus thing, I always like to send them either to John, the Gospel of John, or to Mark, because Mark wants to get us to the cross as quickly as he can. The whole reason he's writing, he says, I want you to meet this Jesus, and I want you to see him clearly. He is God himself. And as Peter has spilled out to Mark to record his eyewitness accounts of what happened, we read in the very beginning that this is Mark's intent. Mark wants to get there so quickly that he leaves out the birth story. He's the only gospel that does. He says, yeah, he's here. There's no denying it. He's here. And Mark uses this language over and over. Says quickly, instantly. And he moves on. He wants to move them to the centerpiece of who Jesus is, and it's found in the cross and the empty tomb. But in the meantime, we read this account and we begin to look at it, and it's like, and this helps us understand that this is an eyewitness account. We read the details, some of the details that are in here. It's like, why would anybody just make 7 verses up about Jesus and then put some of these random details in? Like there were lots of boats with us, right? Or he happened to have a cushion that he slept on in the boat. There's lots of reasons for us to look at this, because when we read modern literature today, if you're making something up, you don't just throw random details in, just have random details, do you? You do it to what? Build the story, don't you? You build the story. It's like why it's important for you to know what the colors of the schoolhouses are in Hogwarts, right? Or what to know and to understand the mountain ranges in Middle Earth, right? These are all things in which we expect in our day and age of writing. Well, it wasn't that way in Jesus' day, and for hundreds of years after it wasn't, because it was eyewitness accounts. It's what C.S. Lewis says about this very chapter, Mark chapter 4. He said, I have read poems, romances, visionary literature, legends, and myths all my life. I know what they're like. And if there's anybody that knows how to tell a story, right, it's probably C.S. Lewis. He said, I know, he said, but I know that this is not one of them. This is nothing like any of them. And this idea that these random things are in there because this is how Peter remembers them, because he was there. He's telling the story, and so you as this unfolds, in verse 35, it says, that day when evening came. Okay, so it's important for us to understand that we're still, the story that we talked about last week, we're still in the same day. Jesus began to talk in parables. We went through the story of the sower, right? But he taught lots of parables. He taught all day, actually. Okay, we're still in the same day. Mark is the only one that records things chronologically. And so we'll get whole chunks. And I think it's significant that we're still in the same day. So keep that in your mind as we talk about this story. Still in the same day. So he's taught all day. He's been in a boat all day, right? On the Sea of Galilee. Here's a picture of the Sea of Galilee. It was probably one of my most favorite parts of the trip to Israel that we got to take. Yes, we got to get in a little boat. Not a little boat, but not as little as, I'll show the next one, not as little as this one. This is what's been called the Jesus boat. Several years ago, there was a severe drought in Israel. It caused the lake to really recede. They found this boat stuck in the mud. This boat dates back to Jesus' day. Now, we don't know whether Jesus was in this boat or not, probably not, but we know that this is what they look like. This is it. It was 26 feet long, 7.5 feet wide. You could squeeze 15 people in it. Okay? This is what they worked out of. This is what we lived in. This is probably the same boat that he stood in and preached out of on the Lake of Galilee. Something just like this. And so when it says the same day, Jesus has been teaching all day. And when he's not speaking to the crowds, he's teaching the disciples that are already in the boat with him. Because remember, they ask. They ask when Jesus tells that story about the seed and about the soils. They go, hey, tell us more. We want to understand. And he does. Right? And when he's done, when the day is done, he knows there's going to be no relief going to shore. So he does something that's really kind of crazy. He goes to the other side of the lake. This lake is, you could argue it's 8 miles wide. You could see the other side, as the picture showed. It's got mountains all the way around it. So it's breathtaking. It's beautiful. But the other side was not home. The other side was not Hebrew. The other side was foreign land. So it was a little odd, that in and of itself. But Jesus says, let's just go. And so it says immediately, or right then, they begin to go. Have you ever taken an impromptu trip, with very little time to plan? As the kids were all home, and very rarely in ministry do you get usually you get less time. Okay, but every once in a while something will happen, and you get like a chunk of time that you didn't know weren't going to get. And I went home during one of these times, and all the kids were at home. They're all pretty small, and Amy loves me so very much because I went to her and I said, "Hey, honey, let's go camping tonight." And she loves me because she said she hates camping. She said, "Okay." And so some of you, when I say camping, you're thinking of you back the truck up to this big camper. You hook it up and you go. That's not our kind of camping, okay? We where's the tent? Where's the air mattress? And by the time we made the announcement to everybody in our house, we're going camping, get your stuff together. 30 minutes, we're in the car. We're driving down the road. How do you think that camping trip went? Huh? Yeah, you get there, it's the zipper doesn't work on the little tent. There's no sleeping bag. Somebody forgot theirs. It's like, did you get the cooler? What cooler? It's like there's no food, right? It's like an adventure for an adventure, right? When Jesus jumped in the boat, by the way, we went to the camp store and bought an out-of-date pack of hot dogs that night. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. They had free popcorn there, and we had a bunch of that. So we're making memories, just all the wrong ones, right? So Jesus gets in the boat. He's in the boat, and he says, "Let's go. Let's just leave. There's no chance to go to the bathroom. No chance to get a sandwich." It is let's go. And so these guys know. And most of everybody in the boat knows what this lake can do. These mountains that are around the lake, some of them stretch 2,000 feet high. The change in the atmosphere from 2,000 feet to the basin of the lake is temperature swings are huge, right? And so when the cold air comes down and meets the hot air, you have instant volatility, right? And so you get some massive storms that happen just at the drop of a hat. And this is what happens. A furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat, and it was nearly swamped, and Jesus in the stern of the boat is asleep on a cushion, and the disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drowned?" It's a great question, isn't it? It's important that we understand that this all happened on the same day. The disciples are getting a chance to live out what they've been learning from Jesus, right? You ever had one of those opportunities? Of course you have, right? This story, many of you, we could all go around the room, so let me tell you a storm. Let me tell you a storm in my life. Or you could say right now, let me describe you what's happening in my life. Yeah. And some of you, right? And this is kind of what happens. though. And it does with me. I get to spend Saturday and Sunday with you guys, and most of the time, you're right. We're singing my songs. I'm just like, man, oh God, maybe that's happened to you. Maybe the whole service was just every song that was sang. It's like, oh, I needed that one. Oh, I needed that one. I needed that one. And then better yet, right? You have this awesome preaching message that happens, right? Probably from Junior or Mike, right? Yeah. And then you're like, man, that just spoke to me. Like, whoa, I needed that. And then you get up Monday morning. What happens? Everything is still there waiting on you, right? Isn't it? That you get, you get in the car and you're like, I'm going to put the key in the ignition or push the button, and I got to go drive to the same problems I had. Deal with the same people who were driving me nuts. I have, or it's better yet, you open the mailbox or you get an email. It's like the same bills that I wasn't ready for. Maybe it's some turmoil in your family. Maybe it's your health. Like Monday comes, it's like, yeah. And then Tuesday comes, and you're like, maybe sometime during the week you're like me. I ask the question, God, do you even care if I drowned? Right? You been there? It's a great question, right? It's real. It's reality. When I was getting ready to preach this, I did a search in my computer because I knew I'd preached on this several times. I had 4 other sermons that I'd preached when it came up, starting back from 2006 all the way up to 19, and it was like, ooh, you preached this one a lot. Surely in one of these 4, you'll find a good one, right? And you don't have to rewrite this. But as I read it, and I read it again, it was like, the storm is crucial. The storm is reality in our lives, but it's not all that's happening. There's something bigger happening here besides what we can see, what you can feel, what you're experiencing. There's something bigger going on. And it says he got up and rebuked the wind and the waves. Quiet, be still. Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. And he said to his disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And they were terrified. And they asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. This brings back lots of camp memories. I was at camp young in ministry, and each night we had a character that would show up and that would teach that night at during the main teaching session. And you bet you Jesus shows up that one night. It was played by David Wheeler, if you know him. It's just like plays an awesome Jesus. And he walks up. It's out on a lake setting. We're all kind of sitting on the ground. Jesus walks up, and says, shalom, right? Peace to you. And as he begins, behind him is this biblical-sized storm that is making its way to us, right? And so, we're like, you're like, hey, we're going to, you go up to talk to Jesus, like, hey, Jesus, we're moving this inside. And he said, nope, no, we're not. I'm not kidding. It was so, you just got to know him. There was a little dock there. He turns and he walks down to the edge of the dock and he goes, peace, be still. And just then, like the clap of thunder and lightning came and it started pouring the rain. And we got a whole different version of who Jesus was then. It was like, it was the wet Jesus, right? And, we all make our way in, and we chuckle about that. But for a lot of us, that's us, isn't it? We're still waiting on it. And if it comes, like it did for these guys, there's a time when these guys come face to face with the real Jesus. And you think that the wording in here, as I looked at this, right? The Greek here is mega storm. Mega calm, mega fear. That's the order we get from this story. I mean, you look at it, it shouldn't be in that order. The order matters, right? But it shouldn't be. It should be like mega storm, mega calm, right? Right? Or mega fear instead of calm. Because when we go through a storm, we're like, okay, this is no fun. I'm fearful. And then we get to the point where there's a mega calm. But that's not the layout of the story. The story is like there's this big storm, there's a calm, and then there's terror. It says they're terrified. They're scared to death. And the disciples are more scared after the storm is over than they were during the storm. Because they realize that Jesus is God himself. They're looking at the real Jesus face to face for what he is and the power that he has over everything. When they ask that question, who has this kind of power to speak to nature in its rawest form and say, and it does what he says? Only God. And for us, well, for me, I've been on this Jesus journey for a while. Maybe you haven't. Maybe it's still something you're investigating. But for me, some of the most terrifying times are knowing that I've become complacent. I've let Jesus take the wheel, right? Jesus, take the wheel, right? And then as time goes by, I find myself, I've got one hand on it, helping him. Like, let's go this way, right? And the next thing you know, I've got both of them on it pretty tight, and I'm asking him just take a seat beside me. How's that sound, right? And then I begin to compartmentalize my life in a way that's like, Jesus, I'm only going to be comfortable with you if you're in certain spaces. And for us, we could all go around the room and we could tell a story about a storm and God leading us through it and could bring us out the other side, and that is certainly a big part of the story. But I think Jesus wants to do something more. He doesn't just want to bring you through the storm. He wants to rearrange your life in such a way that it looks nothing like it did in the beginning. And he does that on the inside. We will always have external storms. And some of those are are caused because of decisions I make. You ever been in one of those? Yeah? Or you've been around people who seem like they're always in a storm, and you begin to like, are you just like, are they the problem? Or is it the storm, right? And you meet people who they identify with the storm and they want to live in it longer than they should. Okay, you ever been around that? Right? And there's a certain comfort that comes in the chaos of it all sometimes. But and that's, I don't want to make small light of any of that, because that is all true. Jesus does that. But when we come face to face with the real Christ, the real Jesus, it causes us to really step back and go, okay, Lord, am I really going to let you rearrange my whole life? Are you really going to be the king? And the reason I bring this issue up about fear is because in the next chapter, when they get to the other side of the lake, they meet this guy that's demon-possessed. As soon as they get off the boat, this guy meets them, and he's obvious demon-possessed. He begins this conversation with Jesus that goes something like this. We are terrified of you, Jesus. Don't torment us. Don't mess with us. Please, we beg you. And Jesus, because the demons call Jesus who he is, the Son of God. What do you want with us? And so through a conversation, they beg Jesus, like, send us into this herd of pigs that's close by, please. And so Jesus does. He sends them into this herd of pigs. The herd of pigs take off across the landscape, jump off a cliff into the lake and drown. Then we pick up in chapter 5, verse 14. It says, those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by legions of demons. So this guy that they had met, this guy, they tried to chain him up. He still had the shackles of the chains that he broke loose and was running around rampant, okay? They see this guy sitting there dressed in his right mind. Everybody knows the guy. And what was the reaction? They were afraid. They were afraid. Those who had seen had told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. The people began to plead with Jesus. Would you please leave? Would you just please leave? Would you just please leave our area? Please. You see, they began to see Jesus for who he really was, and they wanted to keep him at arm's length. You ever been there? Some of you are there now. I'll let Jesus into certain parts of my life that are okay, but it's terrifying. You know, it's the same thing. The same thing that keeps the skeptic where they're at, or the unbeliever, and the same thing that keeps you where you're at. It's fear. It's fear. It's realizing that Jesus really has the power. And I'm not sure that I'm ready to surrender fully to him. It's about control. And if you're a person that likes it, the more terrifying it is. The reality that Jesus calms the storm is so true. Whatever it is that holds you captive, but listen to me closely, church, listen. The truth is that we find in this passage is that some of our bigger hang-ups here, some of the things that we really consider more dangerous than the storm, is the living God coming to indwell in us and us fully surrendering control to him. It keeps us where we're at. See, we'd rather stay there, whether it's some unknown addiction or some secret sin or the way we've been running our company. Than allowing Jesus to transform us in every way. In essence, we push him back at arm's length, just like these people did. It's like, would you just leave the area? Notice the only person in the story that doesn't seem scared is the dude that just got cured from 1,000 demons. He's like going, dude, can I get in the boat with you and go where you're going? I want to go. You know, it's interesting because Jesus says, no, stay here. Share what happened. That guy ends up going not to one town, but 10. And sharing this news. The reality that you and I can come face to face with the one true living God can be a bit scary. I'm going to ask the band to make their way up. I love what C.S. Lewis writes in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It says, line in the story where the 4 kids, Lucy is one of them, that hasn't met the lion yet, Aslan, which is the Christ figure in the story. She's trying to get a feel for what this lion is really like. And so she asks a great question. She asked Mr. Beaver. Now, if you've not seen the story or the movie or the story, you need to. She asked this beaver, she asks, like, is he safe? Is Aslan safe? And the beaver responds, safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he's not safe. But he is good. He is good. He is king. For us to recognize this morning the rightful place of the King of Kings, Jesus, in our lives, whether we're experiencing a storm or a calm moment, it can all be terrifying. But know that He is good. We often want to keep Him at an arm's length distance. He's not one to force Himself on anyone. You see, it's dangerous to embrace the living God, because He will not leave you where you're at. I hope today that if you haven't done that, you will. I love that what John pens in his first letter. He says this: there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. And you see, we often fear God as like He's out to get us. No, that's not the case. He's out to get you in a whole different way. That's why He died. That's why He went to the cross, to pay for the wages that you and I earned from our sin. And if that's you, if that's you're still digesting this Jesus thing, and let's talk more. Maybe today you realize that this you got to make a move, and it feels terrifying. I get it. Let's talk about it. Maybe you've been on this trip for a while, and you've held Jesus at bay for some other reason, and you're ready to yeah, I'm ready to give you back over control. Let's pray about that. Let's talk about that, because you're not alone. I don't know where you're at, but we're just going to simply stand and we're going to sing this song together. Let's do this together. Let's stand.